Welcome and thank you for joining. Today we will be addressing one of the most controversial and important topics for the future of our daily lives, our European politics, and of European monetary policy, is the digital euro. So this is a topic that goes far beyond finance. We're speaking about sovereignty, we're speaking about democratic control, about privacy, and I'm very glad that my colleague Milan Mazurek from Slovakia is joining me today because he's a very important voice in this debate. And we are very strong defenders of national and civic freedoms. So Milan, thank you for your perspective.
Thank you very much for this nice introduction and this opportunity, Rada. And I hope we will bring some very important points of view on that topic because, as you mentioned, digital euro is a very important thing even for the people who maybe don't see it as a possible threat right now, because we are not talking only about the finance and financial issue, about the economic issue. We are talking about the possible loss of rights and freedoms for all the population in the European Union. And this is a very important topic because I think most of the people, if not all, wants to live free life and wants to have freedoms and the rights in their personal life.
Yes, and most of all, they're not even aware of what's going on. According to research, 3 out of 4 people are not even aware that at the moment this procedure is going on, let alone what does it mean? What does digital euro mean and central bank digital currency in Europe? And are they agreeing to what's going to be prepared now officially from the European Commission?
Yes, central bank digital currency poses a big threat for personal freedoms and rights. Because when you create this kind of currency, which is in control of unelected, not politician, bureaucrats in the European Central Bank, who will have a right to decide what we can do with our money, because they will be in control of our money, they will not have any kind of physical appearance, you will not be able to exchange them for the physical money, for the cash, then you are giving to some unelected officials extreme big power above or on your life. They can decide if they will make it programmable, which I believe and I'm for sure they will make in future. They will, for example, decide what we can buy and what we are not able to buy, or, for example, how much of certain things we will be able to buy. And this is a big and extreme threat because we have a lot of proofs, we have a lot of experiences with globalists, for example, from World Economic Forum, who are speaking openly and promoting this idea of cashless society, which can move us toward more sustainability, but I think this will move us only towards more totality.
And control. And I think one very key point is that it's happening almost behind the scenes, because we are here with you in the European Parliament, but how much talk do we have about the digital euro? Almost nothing, except in the Econ committee, where again our questions are not really being answered fully by the European Central Bank. And right at this moment, there is a legal tender that's going on. The European Commission wants to choose a company that will technically prepare the infrastructure and already launched a tender over 1 billion euros. And 3 out of 4 citizens are not even aware that this is happening, because this will change the complete infrastructure for how money works, for how our daily life works. So something is being prepared here, and I think that we have the responsibility to make it very clear and transparent, because I don't see this happening in the committee.
When I led a lot of discussions about this topic in my own country, in Slovakia, people who were in favor of digital central bank digital currency, they often mentioned something like Bitcoin, and they were making arguments that we have a Bitcoin, we have a digital currencies, but this is something what is completely incomparable, because when you have bitcoins in this decentralized currency which nobody owns, nobody is in control of them, and there is a limited amount of that currency. But when you compare it with the central bank digital currency, which will be in full control of the bureaucrats who will decide how much of that currency will exist, which kind of value it will have, and what you can do or can't do with your own money, and they will be in control of your personal account, which will be absolutely relied on their decisions, and we are talking about totalitarian control of the unelected people of our lives. And we know very well, if there is some possibility to misuse some kind of power, it will be misused. History teaches us it completely and correctly. And when somebody don't wants to understand, he is either naive or he don't want to understand it and just blindly believes the people who proved us a lot of times in the past that what they said in 1 year is not what will happen in another year, because when the situation is changing, they are changing their opinions and their public speeches.
Yes, we never know when the next crisis, the next so-called self-created crisis of the European Union and European Commission is going to hit us, and how this module of control is going to be taken by the bureaucrats, because actually they're not giving us the concrete information. This is something very important. Now it's being prepared. The European Central Bank says they will not have the control over what's happening, but actually they will provide the technical infrastructure that the banks or the payment service provider can then incorporate programmability, which means money that is programmed. We really have to ring a bell and look what this means. Can you use it in a certain area only? Or does it mean it has an expiry date? This is technically possible. And the Commission claims, and the European Central Bank claims, that this is not the case. But we have to look in the real documents, in the real tender, because there is an interesting book here. It's called Decoding the Digital Euro, written by a specialist in this particular area, and it warns actually with the actual tender about the programmability. So the European Central Bank says that the digital euro will never be programmable money. Programmable money is money used for a predefined purpose. So they say they will never do it. But then they put in the tender that they will allow the service provider of payments to set limits on where, how this secure code can be used, like only at certain shops. This is something that's outrageous, because isn't it the ECB system that makes the money programmable according to the tender? This is what they're going to put as a condition. I'm not very convinced that they will not use it at the next possible occasion, like the next pandemic or the next self-proclaimed crisis, because why put it as a condition in the technical infrastructure if you never plan to use it?
As you mentioned, I am absolutely convinced that they will use this kind of programmability just to impose these emission limits, CO2 limits on us. We can talk about World Economic Forum, which is a big assembly where even the leader politicians of the European Union, from the European Council for the Council of the European Union, are going and speaking about this kind of agendas. And we saw a lot of time in the past how the European Commission was completely fulfilling the agenda of the World Economic Forum, especially during the pandemic times you mentioned before. And the promotional materials of the World Economic Forums are speaking about exactly this case you mentioned and opened. They are speaking that our current times are facing the big climate change, and we are in big threat for the future. So we need to impose some kind of measures, and their measures are aiming to lowering the consumption rate of the consumers. That means they want to control what the people are buying and what they're spending their money on. And they are talking in very certain ways and certain examples how they want to achieve that. A lot of banks, private companies have imposed to the accounts of the people these CO meters, these ability of measuring how much emissions you produce by your consumer behavior, and they want to make limits for us how much, for example, fuel for our car can we buy, how much, for example, meat can we buy, how much of different products can we buy, because they said they are emission intensive products, their production is energy intensive, and they want to limit our behavior. And they make it very purposely, they make it very open, because from my perspective they just want to gain more control, they just want to maintain their power, and they know very well that when you have controlled population of the people who are brainwashed, that their behavior or their poverty, because this is poverty what they want to impose on the people, when their poverty is their strength and their ability to save the planet, then you have full control. And as we saw, for example, on the last scandal of the former leader of World Economic Forum, they don't want this kind of measures for their own personal life. I am convinced, 100% convinced, that Ursula von der Leyen don't impose this kind of measures for her personal life. Any leader politician in the European Union is not doing what they are saying in the digital euro agenda or program for us.
Yes, and again, they are doing this very quietly, because this legal tender for more than 1 billion is supposed to be completed very fast. They're saying it openly that it has to happen very quickly now. They were preparing it for 5 years in different test phases. And why is this rush? Why all of a sudden, when they see that this kind of order, this kind of old establishment is not anymore in control, this is kind of a form to bring back control with these instruments, because it's happening right now. It has to start with the preparation and then to be implemented in all the countries that use the euro.
I am always honest, and I say openly that they want to connect the project of the digital identity and the wallet of the digital identity with this central bank digital currency. It's something what I believe on 100% sure, and they will just do that because it will provide for them so much control about our lives, and they will be able to impose anything like social credit system in the future. They will be able to impose any kind of control mechanism towards the people who will not listen to their orders. And if even somebody can hear my words right now and think this is some kind of crazy conspiracy theory, just think about the past, think about the totalitarian regimes and what they would be doing if they would have this kind of tools which they will be able to impose on the people's lives. Everybody of them will be using it in a second. Everybody will get them and try to impose them on the people's life because they will bring so much of control. We survived a lot of cases where European Commission were telling us that they will not create some kind of politics, and they created it after. Like we had the debate in 2014 and 15 about the migration quotas, and they said no, this will not be case because there is a big resistance from the Central and Eastern Europe. But after that, 10 years or 9 years after, they accepted the migration quotas, but they changed the name of that program and called it Migration Pact. But inside the Migration Pact, there are the migration quotas. So it took them 10 years, and they imposed on us the politics which we were resisting, and we will see the same in the digital euro, because it's absolutely understandable that from the first moment they want to create as best marketing strategy as possible. They want to say us that this will be not programmable currency because they want to silence the critics and they want to create the best possible image of this digital currency. But we know very well when the European Commission is saying something in 1 year, totally different things can happen and will happen in maybe 5 or 10 years. And we should be aware of our future because this is the freedom which we need to hold and maintain for us.
And as you said, we see that in history, what is the plans of this centralized government that they're trying to build here in Brussels, like one union to rule them all. We know that there were referenda in countries that refused a constitution of the European Union. So what did the European Union do? They put almost everything that's in the constitutional treaty, which was rejected in the Lisbon Treaty. They just changed the package and put the same content in the package. Right now, we have the so-called Savement and Investment Union that replaced the Capital Market Union. It's the same subject, but they rebranded because saving and investing sounds so much better. But who is investing in Europe? That's the biggest problem because of the policies of this centralized future style of bureaucratic Brussels government. We have a huge problem in Europe with all these things. And at the moment, they're saying it's not going to be programmable, but actually they're putting it in the infrastructure. So how can we trust somebody who is always making steps that are actually completely contradictory to their initial intentions? But this looks like a bigger plan, and I think the plan is, as with the euro, to make it political, to make it as one centralized government here with the powers based in Brussels. With the national countries, the national governments have almost nothing to say, just sign everything that's coming, 80% of legislation, and then centralize all the power here.
Exactly, and I would like to bring a very important topic into this debate, or very important point from my perspective. Because I was, as a member of the national parliament in Slovakia, very active in my effort to change the constitution, that we will have a right for cash and cash payments, to cash existence of the cash money in the constitution. Right now, the Slovakia is the only one country in the European Union which has written in the constitution that we have right for cash. And I am really glad we were successful in this kind of movement. But then the ECB, European Central Bank, came and sent a letter to Slovakia that we need to change our constitution because we don't have a right to have something like that in our constitution. And there was immediately a question which arose: why would the European Central Bank be against the right to cash in the constitution of a member country of the European Union if they are in favor of this right? They said openly that they are not in favor of cashless society, but then when some of the country will bring something like that in the constitution, they said we are not permitted to do something like that, and we should change that. Otherwise, they said it openly, we will be fined by them because we as a country don't have this right to have this written in the constitution. Why? What other explanation can exist that they want to impose cashless society on us in the future?
And that we're going to this goal in small steps. And there are different examples that are being discussed that are shown that Sweden is taking the forefront, and it's so much more convenient because, of course, it's more convenient if all the ATMs, if all the cash machines are being removed. We see that, by the way, in Bulgaria, that actually if you want to withdraw cash, you have to drive around town because there is no machine to give you cash. So at the moment, it's trying to be put forward like this way, in these steps. So if consumers don't use cash, that would be a pretext in the future to say, well, anyway, nobody uses it, and it's much more convenient. But I am very grateful for this example because this can be a very leading feature for our sovereign countries and for our parties that are here in Europe of sovereign nations, because cashless society is something that's being very high on the globalist agenda. And we don't want to be controlled by something that we cannot get direct control of ourselves.
And we saw in the United States how the newly elected President Donald Trump signed an executive order to prohibit any continuance of the work on the project of digital dollar. It's refused, it's prohibited, they will not continue in this kind of project. So we see that it's possible to stop this kind of bad changes, and we should do the same in the European Union to stop this kind of project and save the freedom and the rights of the people. And that's why I'm also very grateful that people in Bulgaria have somebody like you who is brave and able to say about these things openly to the public and say to the people how big threat we are facing right now and how big changes it can impose to our lives in the future. Because if the people will not be in control of their own money, that means completely change of their lives. They can lose their rights and freedoms from day to day. So it's very important to talk about this topic, and it's very important to lead this public debate and have strong and responsible people as you to openly warn people, warn the citizens in Bulgaria, in Slovakia, in all of the member states of the European Union what can happen if we let them to finish their project. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Milan. As we said in the beginning, 3 out of 4 of our citizens are not aware of these developments, and it is our responsibility, it is our right to lead these debates, to have this discussion, and to keep you informed. So we will keep doing that here in the Europe of Sovereign Nations group in the European Parliament.